This is the weirdest IEM I've ever reviewed. These are the Mk1 LS50 Wireless 2, and this will be my very first public review of a speaker, any kind of speaker. Exciting times ahead. But also because of that, I think there needs to be some disclaimers. As per usual, I've put all the reasons why you shouldn't trust someone like me on this video. An entire 12-minute video on all the disclaimers, all the reasons, you gotta just watch it. But on top of that, I guess I also need to clarify exactly what my experience with speakers are. I myself am known for being the IEM guy, the headphones guy, the portable audio guy, but speakers are usually something that I don't really touch, at least in public. Now, I used to run a JBL 305 Mark 1, but now I am running a Neumann KH120 with a KH750 subwoofer. I have an iLoud micro monitor, and I'm also kind of planning to get a Genelec one sometime down in the future. Throughout my audiophile journey, of course, I've tested IEMs, headphones, amps, DACs, portable audio in general. But yes, on top of that, in secret, in private, I've also tested a lot of speakers. While I wouldn't say that my experience is extensive within this world, I would say that at least my standards are. And if you're like me and you want products of equally high standard, then why not visit our sponsor, Linsol.com. Yes, this is an ad read. If you're in this hobby, you probably know already, but let me just refresh your memory. Linsol is one of the most trusted Chi-Fi online retailers that you can find today. Browse from a wide catalog of audio equipment from IEMs, headphones, amps, DACs, you know, your typical online retail store. But with Linsol, you can shop with a peace of mind knowing their heritage and the trust that they've gained from many audiophiles over their decade-long career. So if you're ever looking for any kind of Chi-Fi, well, go to linsol.com, tell them I sent you, support the people who support me. Back to the video. Now, my channel is catered towards more of the IEM and headphones crowd, so I assume that most of you watching right now are kind of unfamiliar with the speaker world. So let me explain who exactly Mk1 are. Mk1 is a British brand with quite a bit of heritage behind them. They were founded in 1961 by a man named Raymond Cook. They've created some of the most legendary monitors as well as speaker drivers in their lifetime, one of which would be the $40,000 Blade Meta. Known for that. Now, when it comes to the name LS50, there even comes some history behind it. It was created for their 50th anniversary, hence the name LS50. The LS50 famously was based on the very, very legendary LS3/5A speaker, which was designed by the BBC and then manufactured by many small British firms. And most importantly, the speakers and the woofers were supplied from Mk1. The LS50 active monitors were released in 2012, and the LS50 wireless was thereafter released in 2016 with much fanfare. Then in 2020, the LS50 Meta, which was the upgrade to the original LS50, was released alongside these speakers, which are the LS50 wireless 2s. In effect, even though these are called the LS50 Wireless 2, they could also very well be named the LS50 Meta Wireless. After all, both of them, they use the same meta absorption technology. Marketing words, I know. Now, I have had experience with the original LS50, and quite frankly, I wasn't that big of a fan. I know that they are important in the speaker industry, but when I heard them, I just felt like they underperformed. Famously, they did not have bass, and so both the LS50 as well as the LS50 wireless ones fell out of my favor almost immediately after I heard them. The LS50 Metas, and by extension the LS50 wireless 2s, are a different topic. So let's talk about that. First, let's start with the startup. So the first quirk of the wireless 2s is that if you want to use them as your standard Bluetooth speakers, you can't. That's because if you want to use them wirelessly, you can't, until you've gone through the entire setup process for them. And that is where quirk number 2 comes in, which is a big 2, because the entire setup process, it is frustrating as all hell. First, you have to install the Mk1 app, which is fine. You know, most wireless speakers out there, especially the luxury lifestyle ones, you have to install an app for it. That's how you control the speakers. That's fine. Then it forces you to install Google Home, even though on the brochure it says, hey, the Mk1 app, it's all you need. That's line number 1. And it's just not enough that you have to install 2 apps. I think that's fine. The problem is you have to create an account for both apps. So you need a CAF account on top of a Google account just to use these damn things. Then once everything seemingly got set up, that is where we found that there was an issue with connecting with Google Home because it didn't show up on Google Home. It took us 3 attempts to finally get it up and running on our Google Home network. That said, after we finally finished the setup process, the subsequent users were pretty pain-free. I think the sound calibration app can be pretty good. I've tested it on the desk and it allowed me to account for floor bounce / desk bounce and does it pretty well. So then, the question that everyone probably asks now is, how does it sound, Crin? Is it actually good? The simple answer to that is yes, it's great. I think the moment you have properly calibrated it to your actual listening position or actual listening environment, that's where the LS50 really shines. It is very flat, nothing really gets emphasized, it's not too bright, it's not too recessed in any specific region, nothing really stands out, and I think that is proper for something like a reference studio monitor like speaker. And here is where I introduce you to one of my favorite speaker review channels, which is Aaron's Audio Corner. He uses what is basically the industry standard for speaker measurements, which is the Clipple CES 2034. And yes, I know that sounds like a jumble of words and numbers, but trust me when I say that his data is good. By objective measurements, the LS50 Meta and by extension the LS50 Wireless 2 are pretty good. On-axis performance is great, you have decent directivity, and even though you're not going to be able to get too much of an SPL out of these speakers, I would say for the users of near field and maybe just like home theater use, you're not going to go that far up anyways. But there's a big issue with the Wireless 2, and it's a common issue amongst all kinds of speakers with a 5-inch woofer. There is no bass extension. And that is not a criticism as much as it is pointing out the obvious. You are not going to be able to reach down to 20 Hz, 30 Hz with such a speaker driver. It's just not physically possible. And that's the segue to what I feel like is the greatest weakness of the LS50 Wireless 2, and that is its price. Don't get me wrong when I say that the LS50 Wireless 2 is a great lifestyle speaker. It's a bit like a fire and forget. You put it in your living room, set it up, however painful it may be, and then it just works. It looks nice. There's no extra components that you really have to buy, and it kind of completes the look of any living room that you put it into. But if the question shifts to one that is much more audiophile oriented, for example, is the LS50 Wireless 2 the best sound that you can get for that money? No. Okay, let's put it in perspective, the entire market. Let's look at what is my bare minimum, which is the legendary JBL 305s now in the Mark II generation. The JBL 305s are some of the best budget speakers that I would recommend to anyone. As I've said, it is my bare minimum. For $300 a pair plus a $400 LSR 310 subwoofer, I would argue that this entire set beats out your standard LS50 Wireless 2. And of course the argument here is, but Crin, the LS50 Wireless 2 is an entire all-in-one system. It has streaming capabilities. All the JBLs are is just an active monitor. I get it, I know, which is why I say if you really want to save money, you could always get a streaming solution that is separate from the speakers. A WIM Mini streaming interface goes for about $100, and you could stack it on top of a $200 desktop deck, and you would have the exact same functionalities as you would of an LS50 Wireless 2. And going along this conversation, if you want to go even one step higher, you could get a Neumann KH120 or a KH80 if you want a 4-inch woofer. Add on a KH750 subwoofer, which goes for about $1,400 US at this time, and you wouldn't even have a system that broke $3,000, which I just realized I didn't mention is the MSRP for this system. The other alternative I would like to give as well would be the Genelex. You could get an 8030C alongside a 7050 subwoofer, which would run you about $2,700 US. And again, these are systems that come with a subwoofer. This, on the other hand, is $3,000 US that doesn't come with a subwoofer. So what is my conclusion on all of this? Is the CAF Wireless 2 garbage? You shouldn't buy it. No, it's just for a different audience. As an audiophile, I like to chase sound first, and therefore I wouldn't mind having a separate interface for streaming, a separate DAC, maybe even a separate power amp. But if you're someone who is, mildly interested in sound quality, but at the same time just want something that works inside a living room, then that is the audience base for the KEF Wireless 2. And trust me on this, the market for this kind of demand is very, very high. So the conclusion that I like to give here is that if you want something that is an all-in-one solution and sounds fairly decent, the Wireless 2 is probably your best bet. But if you're someone like me and wants to chase like absolute fidelity, then there are absolutely going to be better options out there, most likely for cheaper. The Wireless 2s are great, but in my opinion, just slightly overpriced for the convenience that you get for the all-in-one factor. So if I got a new house and want to do some remodeling, put a nice pair of speakers into my living room, I think truly that the KEF Wireless 2s would be one of the top of my list. Assuming, of course, I don't get the Genelec ones, but that's a different topic altogether. And that concludes my first ever speaker review. Hopefully, there's gonna be more to come. And of course, now it's time to shout out my big money boys. Here are all of your names if you have subscribed to the $20 tier on my Patreon. And for those who have subscribed to the $30 tier, allow me to speak out your beautiful names: Dennis, McMadface, crinacle, Andrew, Posichronic, Like Pizza, Drizar, Seraphim, Chemotherapy, and Daryl. I thank you all. I don't think this will be my first and only speaker review. Honestly, I have some other stuff that I really like to talk about. So look forward to that. I will see you next week, and don't die. Fuck off.